The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. It's a road show and road trip that continues. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Still in Minneapolis. We are tucked into the Lions pub. They put us in the corner like we fumbled, like we gave up 10 points in 3 minutes. That's not nice. Some of you aren't over last night's action, Nebraska falling to Minnesota. And we're here for a little therapy on Friday. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Mark Kraynak. Weekend edition, a day early. Good to see you. That's right. We can count it as a weekend. It's Labor Day coming up. Yep. Connor Clark also with us. Good to see Connor. Numbers to get in, 489-1240. 489-1240 or toll free across the state, 1-800-825-5865. Can email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. And get in touch with us on the stream, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Watch the show that way. Comment to us in that space. Also, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at H Varsity Radio. Bill Doleman, pride of Fairbury, got in last night late. He is off to one of the 10,000 lakes in northern Minnesota. He'll join us at 5. Brady Oltmans is going to join us as well. Hour 1 and much of Hour 2 open for you. If you still need to talk this thing out, we'll also turn a little bit of our attention to the Buffs and Nebraska next week. So, Elijah, it was a late night with Real Red Reaction. Had a lot of time to think on it. Nebraska fans woke up today still ticked off, and some folks woke up going, let's see how the rest of the season goes. Kraynak, cranky or not this morning after how it ended?
Numb, maybe, might be the word. There's some talk about, hey, are you still optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Are you sad? Are you happy? It's numb. It's just because it's the same feeling after every game, seemingly, over the past, I guess you have to go on. We're coming up on about, this would be the third season of the super close, almost statistically impossible at this point, losses. I mean, really, like, law of averages exists for a reason, right? And my Lord, they are not in Nebraska's favor, which hopefully, maybe one day might lead to all of a sudden it does come into Nebraska's favor. But, man, it's just the same all the time.
And Mark,
all the time.
One of the things that I've been thinking about today, and I brought this up briefly in the reaction show last night. I think it was kind of proven last night, not to just dive too deep into the reaction here. And I'd like to make one thing clear. I usually get a game rewatch out of the way before our next show following the reaction show. Considering Schmidt and I had to get up early this morning for KO4 mornings here locally, didn't get enough sleep. I got a little nap in midday, and I still haven't completed my rewatch, so that might have to wait till this weekend. So I do want to lay that out right now. I haven't completed my usual rewatch of the game, so this is still based on first reaction.
You're doing this off of memory.
Yes, I am doing this off of memory.
So that's the disclaimer. Okay.
But something we talked about last night, and something that I think was proven last night, was the fact that the mentality of Nebraska right now, this football team, the fourth quarter tightening up, that is not an issue that is just reserved for, it's because Scott Frost is the head coach. That is a deep bleeding knife wound to the throat that is not going to be fixed by a Band-Aid. Now, I think a lot of people talk themselves in.
We went knife wound to the throat this time. I love it.
Think about it. Nebraska was bleeding out in the last 4 minutes of that game last night. Now, I think a lot of people with Matt Rule in charge, and maybe I'm even partially included in this list, thought that it was a I shouldn't call it a Band-Aid fix. That's probably a little light of a term to use, but that the mentality shift would be there, and it would be the talent shift that would take longer to come around. I think we saw a talent shift last night whenever I look back at that game. I think Nebraska was better almost everywhere on the field aside from quarterback and wide receiver when you compare them to what they were last year. But the thing that's going to take the longest to get fixed now after watching last night is getting that mentality and that culture shifted. And it's not going to be a Band-Aid fix that's going to get that right. It's going to be a long and painful process. And I think as of right now, I hope I'm not premature in saying this, we have to expect some more painful losses this year. That's how it's going to go.
Sure.
That's Matt Rule's history. And how he rebuilds a program. You have to go through some hell before you get to the mountaintop. And I think right now Nebraska is going through a little bit of hell, and we'll see how much they can get fixed before next week. Not to just dive too deep into this game already, but I still have more thoughts. There was still just so much heartbreak from last night's game that I don't think a 2-hour reaction show tonight or last night plus another 2-hour show today and probably even a 2-hour show tomorrow is going to allow us to get all our thoughts on last night's game out. But we're sure as hell going to try.
All right. Can we decouple, though, and I'm asking this like rhetorically, I'm just saying, can we decouple what Nebraska was? Yes, the feeling was the same for all of us last night. I think it's pretty clear there was a cultural issue, and the further we get from Frost, the more you kind of hear different things where it starts to make a little bit of sense. Can we just isolate last night on, like, was that the team being tight, right? Was that the entire team just or
no,
or was it Grant? That was actually that fumble. Of course, you can't do it, right? He's got to figure out how to secure it more.
It was textbook,
pretty damn good, but pretty good play by Minnesota, right? Like you sort of have to give them their due there. Like
that was like the peanut punch, dude.
Yeah,
I mean it was an excellent defensive play to cause that fumble, right? So can you equate that to a deep-seated cultural issue?
No.
I don't know. That might have been just good play, right?
Yes.
And then the interception. Well, I don't know why you're having the dude throw. Like, that's a whole nother thing we're going to get into today.
Yes.
A little theme called "Run the Ball." I don't know if you've heard of that.
Kraynak, you've got the T-shirt, you've got the hat, and you're a member of the fan club. Run the damn ball. Listen. It's not about going into the fetal position and sucking one's thumb.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota made some clutch plays and some clutch moments and outperformed Nebraska. That touchdown catch, on 4th down. I know Elijah has video footage on Twitter at Herbel Essence of a potential false start there. 600,000 views. Good work, sir. And you also have the coaching aspect. I liked Nebraska's mentality. I liked how ready Nebraska was defensively, okay? They tackled. They did well stopping the run. They were better than we've seen in a while getting after the quarterback. They're still not vintage pressuring the quarterback.
But they got after him a little bit.
I mean, the defense did everything they could except 2 stops. Minnesota pulled a magic act out, and they made some plays. And they took advantage. It's not, again, because of a mentality. You've got a quarterback problem right now if you're Nebraska when it comes to having to throw the football. Period. That's the loss. You got a fumble. You got 3 interceptions. There's your issue, and it's not a psychological thing. I think they can come out, fellas, and go to Boulder pissed off. That needs to be the mentality, because stop me if you've heard this before. If Nebraska starts 0-2, you're really worried about the season. Nebraska could start 0-2.
Now, I wonder how different this is, too, because a lot of people are saying, well, I don't know if Nebraska can really win this game, and a lot of, including myself, picked them to lose this game. But now that it's actually a reality, the thought process going into Colorado seems way more urgent. I mean, you said it, too. Like, if this is an 0-2 start, then you're looking at an emergency in the face, and you got to try and navigate through that. Now, the good news is you have a longer week. You can watch Colorado play on Saturday against TCU, so that's a plus for you as well. And then you can have the extra day or two to try and get at least mentally prepared for this game. And as you guys highlighted, I mean, Minnesota made some spectacular plays down the stretch. The forced fumble was absolutely textbook, put his fist right on the ball, popped right out. They were right all over it. Yep. That catch in the end zone was very, at least for me, Jackson Smith and Jigba-like in that COVID season.
Excellent.
It was a fantastic toe drag. they showed the replay of that diving catch out of the back of the end zone. That could have been a touchdown too. I don't know. The ball hit the ground and out of bounds. It's a whole different discussion. It didn't count, but whatever. And their safety, and I can't remember his name, 2 picks, and that last one at just an absolutely huge moment, cutting off of a route over the middle. Now, Jeff Sims, yes, had the 3 interceptions, including the one in the end zone, which really hurt you at the end of the first half. But he also was able to make some throws into some tighter windows, which I was kind of surprised about when you look at the picks that he threw, right? I mean, a lot of them were off the back foot, kind of lobbing them up there, maybe missed an open guy or two, but a couple of nice throws to Marcus Washington were sprinkled in there, especially later in the game. And I think you see the potential of the team and where they can go. I was very pleased with the defense, especially their physicality. The only knock I have on them is the whole Ty Robinson thing with the targeting call. But other than that, I really like the defense, and it'll be interesting to see because, again, just another excruciatingly heartbreaking loss. But again, it's game 1 of a new regime. I mean, how much weight can you really put that in? And I think it's a pretty large amount of weight that you put into that.
And Schmidt, to jump in here, I think we'll have plenty of time to talk about Sims because you kind of laid out the game that he had last night. Had some good throws, had some terrible throws. We can get into that just a little bit. I've seen some comparisons to Jamal Lord, and I want to get Mark and Schmidt's take on that because I don't remember watching Jamal Lord play. I was alive, but I was an infant. So I can't really speak on that. But one thing I do want to get into.
The old guy slam. I don't remember watching Jamal Lord play because, I was crawling.
Well, one thing I do want to get into here, though, is something Connor laid out. He laid out some of the plays that Minnesota made down the stretch to go win the game. And that's something that now, almost 24 hours on, I've had some time to digest. And I can admit, the 4 turnovers, not ideal. You're not going to win many, if any, football games with 3 picks. But simply put, the difference in the game was that when Minnesota had opportunities to make plays down the stretch, they capitalized on those plays. The touchdown at the end, they get an interception as Nebraska is driving down the field. On that final play, whenever you're right on the edge of field goal range, your running back makes a man miss, picks up 9 yards, and makes an easier kick for his field goal kicker to go win the football game. And you compare that to some of Nebraska's plays down the stretch and really throughout the game. I mean, Isaac Gifford had a great chance on an interception in the end zone late in that one before Minnesota scored the game-tying touchdown. I'm sure he's going to be kicking himself over that one. Gabe Ervin, on that drive, he had a seam, and if I remember correctly, he had a first down picked up by the time that ball gets punched out. Like Minnesota just made more plays down the stretch whenever they had those big moments.
Grant.
Sorry, I keep on saying that. It's the second time I've done it today. I apologize, Schmidt. It was Grant. But whenever Nebraska had opportunities to make plays to go win the football game, you can even go back to right before halftime, whenever you should be punching it in from the half-yard line and you have a false start, and then you have Borkacher on the next play open in the end zone, and you throw it to IGC in the corner of the end zone, and you telegraph the throw, and it gets picked off. Nebraska just, whenever they had big moments and opportunities to make big plays to potentially put that game away, they didn't take advantage. Whenever Minnesota had those same opportunities, they took advantage. And simply put, that's the story of last night's game. And I think that comes down a little bit to mentality and maybe some PTSD from years past. It's going to take some years or some time to get right because of the years of those events occurring. And it's not a band-aidable fix, I think last night showed me. But there is signs of encouragement coming out of that game because I think Nebraska, for the first time in a long time, maybe dating back to the Michigan State game, lost a one-score game, and I do actually come away from it saying, I think Nebraska overall was the better team. Minnesota made more plays. They had the better quarterback. Yep. That's your X factor. But I do think Nebraska had the better team last night, which is a sign of encouragement.
Here's the reality. And here, if you're a Nebraska fan, and we'll dive into this here and carry it over. We'll have some more thoughts from Matt Rule. But are you encouraged or discouraged? Clearly you're discouraged about the result. Clearly you're discouraged about some elements of the offense. It wasn't perfect defensively, but it was good enough defensively to win. The difference is going to be this. Under the old regime, this we're cursed type mentality existed, right? It existed. Well, I don't know what to tell you. Found a way to lose. We just need some. Yeah. Once it pops. Listen, I'm not sitting here to pin you out of Scott. I'm not. But that his own body language and lack of leadership through some of those tough times was an issue, and it kind of permeated the locker room. a losing mentality. Matt Rule is not that. He is going to be the difference in next Saturday and beyond the next time there's a close ball game. And he said it out of the get-go with his postgame. He's about accountability, and part of that accountability is like, look, you're not going to feel sorry for yourself. Go be better. And he said Minnesota made plays at the end, made more plays. Their quarterback made more plays. Mm-hmm. Their defense made more plays with the turnovers, forcing those turnovers, or at least making and getting a stop. And the other part of this, too, Matt Rule is a hands-on guy. He is going to coach the players. He is going to coach his coaches. And I would be surprised if there wasn't a meeting, because they've got to recalibrate what is a real thing you can ask Sims to do moving forward. What's sustainable offensively? Because it was him running the football. That's it. It ain't him throwing the football.
I mean, if you take away that weird trick play, the Osborne play, as he called it, Sims is 10 of 18.
He had 6 points.
Sims is 10 of 18 for 80-something yards, which is a terrible performance in a 2023 standard for a college quarterback.
Oh, absolutely. And look, the offense needs to discover its identity a little bit too. You know, for Gabe Ervin being the starting running back, I think he got, 9 touches? Something like that. He had hardly any in the first half whatsoever. You do need to think about what you're going to do. I think you nailed it, though, with quarterback. There might be a difference between, and this I think goes back 2 decades, between what Nebraska wants to be versus what they are.
We'll get there. We'll take your calls. Hail Varsity continues on a Friday.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow Friday. Still in Minneapolis. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. And get to some of your phone calls and all of your comments in the stream as well. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Watch the show. Comment that way. We'll get to them. Pete, thanks for your patience. Thanks for hanging on the line. Pete, I know it was a tough one last night. Go ahead. Thanks for calling.
Well, thank you. You know, the quarterback is just staring down his receiver. It makes it pretty easy for the safety to come over and make interceptions. I'm not sure you can correct that in the quarterback short term. I think that's going to be something we're going to have to live with all year, and they're going to have to develop some routes that are quick routes, and so he can go through hit his receiver sooner, because when he goes deep, he's just absolutely staring down, and he's not going through progressions. And that's a killer. And I think the coaching needs to be a little bit better. I think they'll learn from this and maybe learn how to call a game. You know, they've got to get better too. It's a new staff. Why you put a running back in that has a tendency to fumble when the game's on the line, I just disagree with that. You want your best players out there when the game's on the line. So I think part of this is just self-induced, and it's correctable, but I think on the quarterback side, it's going to take some time. I think he's going to have to run the ball an awful lot this year to be successful. I thought the defense looked pretty good throughout the game. I like our talent there, and they seem to get better as the game went on, in my opinion.
Pete, I agree with you. Defense looked nice. Yep. Made a lot of plays. Very few missed tackles. And they also got a little help. I'll say this about the offense. The offense was able to flip the time of possession in the second half from what looked like it was going to be a death march.
It was respectable. It seems like Minnesota's usually 40-20 on Nebraska. It was much. It was almost even.
And it was 10-4 or 10 to 4 after that first quarter. Pete, appreciate the phone call, 489-1240 or 800-825-5865.
Yeah, and, you know, he makes a point about Jeff Sims in particular on locking on receivers, which...
You were just doing some film study?
Which, by the way, you can hear that just, like, generically almost every season. Somebody will say that about a quarterback, whether it's true or not. In this case, it's really true. And, like, just right before this, Brian, our friend that's here, pulled up Sims' highlight tape from Georgia Tech. It's like a 5-minute reel. And he's like, just watch. Look how many times he looks at his one receiver and delivers just to that receiver. And it was pretty much every throw. Like, just for real. Like, pretty much every throw. He really isn't doing a lot of scanning, doing a lot of checking down. By the way, it's a hard thing to do. Like, it's not. He had a good climb up in the pocket last night, so he has some quarterback skills that are pretty interesting. I don't know if you remember that, but where he had a lot of pressure and he did a Brady-esque climb up the pocket.
And ended up whipped it to Washington.
Yeah, excellent play, right? Like, you haven't seen that in a while either. But his point about having to run the ball, okay, and that's such an easy thing to say too. But what's the reasoning behind? We don't want to commit to that kind of offense because then you won't be able to get the recruits don't want to play in that kind of offense, and they want to play in the NFL. Nebraska's not sending quarterbacks to the NFL, y'all. That's been attempted for like 20 years now. There's 0 quarterbacks that have made it to the NFL under all kinds of offenses where you're trying to attract the best recruits and run a pass happen. It doesn't work. Ain't going to work. Not going to happen, period. We got 2 decades of evidence here. And then let's go ahead and add on the receivers aren't coming either. What do you have in the last 20 years? What, Quincy Enunwa? Niles Paul converted to tight end. That's it.
Trey.
So Trey. Okay. Now he hasn't officially played in the NFL yet. It's only been preseason. But you know what I'm saying. 20 years of trying to have an attractive.
Was the number 1 pick overall.
Yeah, it was 50 years ago.
Exactly.
No, it's 40,
more 40. Old shade.
So
geez.
20 years of attempting to have an offense that appeals to recruits that can get guys to the NFL and all, hasn't worked out. But you know what looked beautiful last night was Sims running the football.
Yes.
He was really good at it. And guess who's behind him? Heinrich Haarberg. Guess how well he throws? Not very well.
We don't know that.
Right? And then how about Purdy?
He catches passes. We know
Purdy
that.
Last year. Yeah, God bless Purdy. We watched him last year. But I don't think Brady's is waiting in the wings either. So you got 3 dudes that can run that can't throw really well. That's who you are. I don't know who you want to be. You can make all these promises about getting guys to we want to be balanced and throw. That's not what you are. That's not what you are. So I don't know.
We could be a service academy school.
Right. I think they can.
A higher level one.
I think they can drill down, reinforce what Sims can do well, right? And that's some play action, some quick throws, and use his legs. We just don't know how long his mobility will last in the Big Ten because it's the injury factor. Brett emails in Chris@HailVarsity.com. The problem is people that go to road games that are bad luck. Same problem the last several years. You need to stop going to road games.
Hey, it's all good. Hey, I'm going next week. Next week, I'm going to Colorado. And if you remember, last time I took a road trip with Schmidt, it was the Oklahoma game where Nebraska almost got it done.
Almost.
You should stay back.
Almost didn't lose.
That's
almost.
Funny.
Yeah, maybe Nebraska isn't cursed. Maybe it's not Schmitty. Maybe it's not the fans. Maybe it's the product on the field. Hey, what a novel thought. And whenever I go back and watch last night's game, like, to get back to Sims here, the product on the field that we saw, like, it's so hard to say. It's so hard to say aside from the interceptions, because the interceptions are the story of last night's game for Jeff Sims.
They were the killer.
Aside from the interceptions, if you end up taking 3 sacks on those plays, I think Nebraska still has got a great shot of winning those football games. If Jeff Sims tries to tuck it and run and gets stuffed in the backfield and picks up no yardage, it comes down to decision-making from Sims. When we talk about him being locked onto receiver, I was frustrated with that last night as well. But then I thought about it, and I look at so many dual-threat quarterbacks across the country. That's how it works. Hey, you got your one
right.
read, and then if you're a guy who's going to be scanning the field and going option 2 and option 3, we actually think you're more dangerous with your legs. So we're going to have you read the defense pre-snap, go through your first read. If it's not there, tuck it and run. I think the problem with Sims was too many times he said, I see a guy, I can make it work, I'm going to trust my arm. And the thing you should be trusting when you're Jeff Sims is your legs instead of your arm.
And how is Nebraska, and we got a comment in the stream here about the left side of the O-line is pathetic on passing downs. They're responsible for a lot of Sims sacks.
He got pressured. He dropped back, 19 times. He was pressured on 7 of them.
Something like that.
That was the Pro Football Focus. We'll get to the phones in a minute.
Though, about you're also not good at pass blocking. So you got a guy that, yards.
He can get you in play action. Use him that way.
Exactly.
Right?
Listen, and this isn't Nebraska has to go back to a carbon copy of the mid-90s offense. but they could benefit from just going ahead and admitting that doing what everybody else does probably isn't going to work out. You got to find something that's unique. For whatever reason, the Big Ten almost refuses to have mobile quarterbacks. I don't know why, but they just do. There's just not a lot of those guys, and you're seeing more of them now. But I don't think they're using Callie McManus to like what he could be in the run game. Right?
He's mobile, but he's not a runner.
But my point is that you have an opportunity in a Big Ten that just really hasn't had dudes like Sims, like Martinez, right? Like Taylor Martinez.
They don't survive.
Yeah, those dudes, well, fair, but that's why you got backups that also can't throw. I mean,
and good luck and God bless getting a serviceable backup to not transfer in the transfer portal era. I mean, it's hard to get one.
It's going to happen anyways. It's going to that's built in, right? Like people are going to transfer no matter what, right? It's just, I don't know.
It's going to be an ever-evolving thing, and I think there's a chance to what we've talked about a little bit earlier is learn from this. If you're Rule in Satterfield, what is correctable, what is coachable with the Nebraska offense, specifically quarterback, and can you get your dude to not make bad decisions, right? It's not that great point Elijah had that there are some quick, like Tommy Armstrong, right? Tommy Armstrong would have 4 guys signaling to him. He'd look over, and a lot of times it was predestined to where the ball was supposed to go.
Right.
That would be Kenny Bell in the slot or get it to Quincy and just do it quick that way in the Tim Beck offense. It's okay. Make it easy and painless for your dude to be a playmaker with his arm and his legs. Nebraska needs to find out a way to do that here by Saturday.
Well, and they need to figure out, and it's going to take a little bit. So when I'm saying they need to figure it out, I'm not saying they have to figure it out tomorrow because they can't. But what their offensive identity truly is. I think defenses seemed pretty clear. I think it's a little bit easier to establish that. But when you consider it's a new offensive coordinator in Satterfield, new head coach in Rule, new quarterback in Sims, right? It's going to take a little bit to figure out, okay, like what actually are we good at? Not in practice, but in actual games. You know, I bet you if they look back at the chart too, they're saying, you know what, we should probably get it to the running back a little bit more.
I think they're having trouble finding something they're good at right now.
But they should probably get it to the running back a little more, get those guys a chance to get in some rhythm, just commit to that. But they're going to have to figure out what their identity is.
The running game didn't pop, fellas, until Sims got going with his legs.
Yeah.
And then things opened up for the running game. Do we have a caller real quick?
That's how that works.
We have Mike on the line.
That's how that works.
Yeah, I know.
That's how it works.
Mike, thanks for calling. Go ahead, bud.
Yeah, why did they run Casey Thompson off?
We talked about that in the show last night, and I think that's a great question to have today.
I think they wanted a mobile quarterback, a running quarterback, and they didn't feel Casey was going to be able to do that.
Well, he ran last year, didn't he?
Well, no. My concern.
He had 6 touchdowns, yes.
My concern
he was not a running quarterback.
And it's a small sample size, Schmidt, right now, but my concern is based on what I've seen thus far, and I'm including Sims starts at Georgia Tech, I'm concerned you ran off the better quarterback for a quarterback that you liked.
You run
more.
off the better decision maker.
I mean, I really don't want my quarterback leading the team in rushing. I just think that's a recipe for disaster.
I
take it you weren't a big A-Mark fan, Mike.
Well, it would be better having that come from having most of those running yards coming from the running back with the quarterback as the guy to keep you honest to allow that to happen. And look, running off Casey Thompson, maybe part of it, maybe this is benefit of the doubt. Maybe part of it was, hey, our pass blocking is terrible.
Not going to get better in a year.
Casey Thompson's not going to be able to do what we want him to do there anyways.
Good point.
So might as well go with the guy that can probably move the chains better running the football. That could have been part of it.
Mike, thanks for the phone call. Good question. Casey is not a runner. They wanted that part of the offense. More of your thoughts and calls, 489-1240. 800-825-5865. Can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. More comments to get to the stream. Hail Varsity YouTube channel.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity Radio, Roadshow Friday. Still in Minneapolis, Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel, and Connor Clark. Mike chimes in with Sims as quarterback. They're essentially just running the Wildcat.
Oh, come on now. That's not that bad. Listen, he's okay. Sims is okay within 10 yards.
He did well.
10 to 12 yards. That mid-range, Elijah, you'd mentioned it. A couple of those throws to Washington were solid. And you saw that in the spring game, too. The little intermediate stuff, especially not outside towards the boundaries, but towards the middle of the field. Yeah, he kind of looked it kind of looks like that's his thing. You know, like he's able to lead receivers, not just hang them out to dry and have them jump up and get killed in the ribs or anything. Like, he's pretty good in that intermediate stuff.
From a quarterbacking point of view, I think Sims, with the arm talent that he has, is a more talented quarterback than Taylor Martinez was for Nebraska. Where he struggles right now is that decision-making process, which if you don't have ball security, you don't have job security, especially as a quarterback. If you're going to be throwing picks, you're not going to be playing for very long. It's as simple as that. Taylor Martinez had him beat in the decision-making process, but from what he can do with the football, how he can spin it, he's a better pure talent-wise quarterback than Taylor Martinez. He's got to get the decision-making down. And what concerns me right now is the fact that we have a 2.5-year sample size at Georgia Tech and now a 1-game sample size at Nebraska. And in all of those games, I mean, at Georgia Tech, he was averaging a pick per game. And then last night, he goes and throws 3. So in his college career, he's averaging more than 1 interception per game. He has shown us what he is at this point. It comes down to the coaching staff now, I think, to put him in situations where he's not going to be making bad decisions. How do you do that? It's probably more quarterback run, trying to get that defense out of man coverage. If you're able to give a threat with the legs, force a quarterback spy from a defensive game plan, force them to stay out of man coverage, you're going to be giving yourself more opportunities to make throws. You can scheme wide receivers open a little bit better. But I think there's going to be an element of that responsibility falling on the quarterback, or falling on the coaching staff, I should say, rather than the quarterback, to give him easier decisions in the game, because he has proven he's a poor decision maker in the heat of the moment through almost 4 years of college play.
Right, and can you undo that? Can you change what you've been to what you need to be? And that's the $1 million question for Boulder. Timothy chimes in, too much overreaction. My score prediction was 17-13 Minnesota. They were favored by 7.5. Nebraska was never supposed to win this game. That's the other part of this. We'll get into it here next hour. But, yeah, you feel different because you led, and you led late, and you had a chance several times to put it away. But if it was just kind of the old blind score here, Nebraska lost 13-10, you were like, all right, hell of an effort, fellas. No.
I mean, it feels very frosty.
The 10
That's
of the
why
13,
there's overreaction. It's very frosty.
The 10 of the 13 points came in 3 minutes.
Well, and listen, there's only 12 of these things, right?
Sure.
It's I think you have to overreact a little. This is like an 80-game sport, maybe a little bit different. But there's only 12 of these things, so they all matter.
You want it to be different under a new regime. You want it to immediately flip. Let's get to some calls real quick. Dan, thanks for hanging on. Go ahead, Dean. We'll be right with you. Dan, go for it.
All right. Hey, fellas. I watched Jeff Sims, and immediately I thought about the Jamal Lord era. It was deja vu all over again, boys. We're going to have to simplify things greatly, and he's our only playmaker. So it is what it is. We got to find a way to scheme appropriately to use his strengths, and we also need to understand, as I just heard, boy, it's going to be awfully easy to game plan for the Nebraska offense.
Hey, let's not forget
sustainable. Look at your offense.
Let's not forget. This is why I want to get your take here on the Jamal Lord comparison, because I've seen that thrown around a lot today, and I sit back and I go, well, hey, Nebraska did win 10 games in that 2003 season, and I didn't get a chance to watch those games. I don't remember it, so I don't know if that record is not indicative of the quarterback play.
39 interceptions.
But they won 10 games.
Yeah, well, listen, okay. To compare him to Jamal Lord is not fair. Like Jamal threw a great deep ball to a fast tight end. Period.
Right?
That's it. That's all. Play action.
And he was so good with his legs that he made so much happen in the option of the quarterback counter game.
Yeah, and
he's really a really talented quarterback, but he was limited as a thrower.
Yeah, no. Jeff Sims is infinitely a better thrower than
better
Jamal
arm
Lord is. Oh, 100%. Yeah, because he can. Right.
Their style is similar right now with their strengths.
I mean, Jamal would throw some balls that, like, seriously would bounce, 5 to 7 yards in front of his intended target, right? I mean, he just was not an accurate guy at all. And I'm not saying that Sims is the second coming here, but however, I do like the idea based on what he has shown so far. Again, to go back to getting the running backs a few more touches, set up play action for him better. Set up play action for him better, where it's not like you're having to throw into a ton of traffic all over the field. You got a guy deep, you try to hit him, and they were close to hitting one last night.
Yeah,
they were really close to hitting one of those last night. Like, that should be the bulk of his throws.
Well, you got to get good at the run game.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get good at the running back run game to make the play action a reality, or you just kind of do the old zone read fake and do a quick seam. Dean is with us. Dean, thanks for hanging on. Go ahead.
Dean, we got you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Dean, you're on the air.
Hello,
go ahead.
Dean. Go for it.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. There's just two things I'd like to make a point of. The first play from scrimmage, I love that because they were able to push the Minnesota line back 5 yards and get 5 yards.
Quarterback sneak.
Yeah, they're on the quarterback sneak, and we weren't able to do that before. And the other thing was, at a halftime, we came out and looked like a better team, and it's been a while since that's happened.
And that's something I said leading off the show. I think Nebraska looked better than they were last year and probably looked like the better team everywhere except quarterback and wide receiver. I mean, I think back to last year, the offensive line was better, especially running the ball. The pass protection looked slightly better. I look at the tight end room. They weren't utilized all that much, but I thought they blocked pretty well, especially in the running game. Defensive line looked better and deeper. Linebackers were flying around. They seemed to fit that scheme really well. I liked what I saw from the defensive backs, especially in that third and first half of the fourth quarter. I can even throw most of the second quarter in there as well. I liked what I saw just about everywhere, and let's include the special teams as well. Special teams looked better. Where Nebraska looked worse than last year was just quarterback and wide receiver from what I saw last night. And maybe you can take that as a sign of positive encouragement. Maybe it's based on how bad those two areas were, you're worried about the rest of the year. But I do think everywhere else in the field, Nebraska looked better.
Can I ask a question for the room? And I'm the same guy, and I'm gonna raise my hand. A year ago, when Nebraska got destroyed by Oklahoma, I'm like, damn, Oklahoma looks like a playoff team.
Oh, and I disagreed with you. Do you remember that? I disagreed with you on that reaction.
I'm giving you a confession right now, so take this.
Hey, I said the same thing, Schmitty, so you're not alone.
I said, damn, Oklahoma looks like a playoff team. Yeah, thank you, Kraynak. They did that day.
It's all relative.
6 and 7 later, Nebraska.
I mean, Minnesota's a playoff team. No,
I am not going there.
Okay,
I'm not going there. Minnesota is a 4 or 5 win football team.
You think? I had them at 7 and 5. That's what I see. I liked what I saw from Callie McManus last night. I thought he looked good in the quarterbacking spot.
He was really talented. We'll wind down hour one. More of your thoughts. Hail Varsity continues. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Hold on, Schmitty. I got to fix something here. Because now you're not coming out, which is...
Because I muted my mic.
There we go.
Apparently I was live during the break.
I couldn't hear you, so I don't know what was going on.
Well,
but anyway.
Cutter and Elijah, not our Elijah, but Elijah Shaw in the stream. Now my mic's off. Yeah, that's pretty good.
My mic's on now.
So, somebody's mic is off, somebody's on. Now everybody's on. Okay, we're good.
Yay. Wonderful.
And it looks like you were mic'd up over the break.
Yeah, I gave everybody in the room a compliment saying this is a fun show. It's flying by.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So you didn't say anything terrible.
No. Let's
like
hear,
usual. You should hear this guy between
Let's hear Matt Rule master the art of not saying something terrible with 4 turnovers. And he talks and was asked about his quarterback. Cut to Matt Rule on Mr. Sims and just kind of laying out where Nebraska fell short yesterday.
Obviously as a quarterback, you can't have those turnovers, right? Even right before the half, kind of an odd sequence, right? Either it's a touchdown or it's a false start, kind of weird how that happened, right? But I thought he had some really good moments. He had some key throws, especially in that 2-minute drive moving us down the field. Obviously he ran for over 100 yards. He was a dynamic threat in the zone read game. But, you have to protect the football, right? And so back foot throws and all those things, that's not what we need. We don't need that. I was prepared to go to overtime. I thought Sat did a really nice job, called some runs, got a couple first downs, turned it into the last drive. So we're going to go down there, take a shot at a long field goal or go out. But this is a first step for Jeff, and we'll coach him, and he'll come back. I thought the fumble, with 2 minutes left, like we're gonna go try to run the clock out. We're run the ball for 6 yards. Unfortunate that happened. So.
Well, there you go from Rule. Timothy chimes in the stream again. Timothy's had some good comments. Continuing from above, you guys told us that Sims throws interceptions and Grant fumbles. So not surprising when you see it in a game. If it's happening in practice, we're all ready for a game with two good defenses and two ugly offenses. It was going to be a rock fight. It's just different where Nebraska had a chance to steal one. They didn't. And then to lose, getting a baseball bat to the groin, like so many times previously the last few years, is part of this volcanic eruption here.
You've heard from quite a few people, even Elijah and Connor to some degree today, like on the show, is just the general notion that Nebraska appeared to be the better team. And I don't think you could always say that against Minnesota over the past few years.
No.
Yeah, you would want to say that.
They were never more well coached than Minnesota.
Yeah, no. That continued. No, I'm kidding. But really, most people, I think, came away with that of just like, okay, Nebraska's not, looking up at Minnesota and just wishing they could have that level of talent. If you look at what Callie McManus was, they were running for their life. He was running for his life most of the night. They had to make exceptional plays offensively in order to move the ball. We talked about that play made in the end zone with a foot drag.
Yeah, that was incredible.
That's what it took, though, right? Because Nebraska's defense was just all over them. As soon as you made a catch, there's 3 or 4 dudes right there, and they're hitting hard. So, yeah, Nebraska did appear to be the better team. Obviously didn't win, and so it's those little things. What are you going to do? Are you going to have an identity that focuses on what you are versus maybe what you want to be?
Sure.
What Nebraska is a quarterback-centric running team with decent running backs.
Hour 2 coming up. Hail Varsity continues.
He's the pride of Fairbury, an average Joe. Bill Doleman, the professor.
I had a 6 ACT in 1967. One time I got an A and my grandma beat me for cheating.
Now with Hail Varsity Radio.
Oh, I needed the drink there. Hour 2, it's Hail Varsity Radio. Presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, the pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports, the professor Bill Doleman, enjoying all of Minnesota's outdoor festivities. He's on a lake. I don't know if he's in a canoe or a fire pit or what, but it's pretty scenic. It looks like you're about ready to shoot. You've done mattress ads in Denver, Bill. Are you ready to shoot a Old Milwaukee commercial?
Well, speaking of shooting, we're out in the lake here earlier trying to find Fredo, if that's what you're wondering what I'm doing up here.
Okay, which lake is that, by the way? What lake
I don't know, where are we? Gull
Lake.
Get your Gumi, apparently.
Get your
I
what?
believe Lake Gull up by Brainerd.
Got it.
It rhymes with ball.
It almost looks like he has like a virtual background because it's like the type of background that people would put as their virtual background, like some beautiful lakefront, but it's actually real.
Yeah, it's the real thing. I was heading back to Lincoln and I took a wrong turn and just kept going and ran into a 12-pack of Guinness. So you said you needed a drink.
Yeah.
I have a quick aside here. The background reminds me, and you guys might remember the name. There was a Nebraska tight end way back in the day. It was like the Crouch years. Troy Hasselbrook was his name.
Yeah.
He was my middle school social studies teacher. And I believe he went off and became a firefighter. But long story short, he briefly
drove him out of teaching.
Well, no. Briefly following his college football career, he got into modeling. He bounced around. And I think we're friends on Facebook. I think he's settled into firefighting. He's been doing that for a while now. But long story short, briefly, he was a model following college, and we found one of his videos back in middle school of him as a model in a music video where he's like sitting on a dock just like that on a lake. And he's sitting there shirtless with this female singer. Like the music video is her like stroking his chest and like singing this weird love song. And that video made the rounds in middle school. And I don't know if anyone ever told him that we found that video, but I remember that being just the craziest week of middle school ever, of seeing your middle school social studies teacher in a music video that's like a little bit sexualized with some woman stroking his chest. That was a random aside, but...
There's about 5 ways that short story long could have taken a very strange turn that would have been best for Hail Varsity Radio After Dark.
No, and I just brought it up because he was a former Husker, and just the background, that lake looks like the lake that he was at with this female singer-songwriter.
Pride of Lincoln High.
What he's saying, Bill, is after this segment, take the shirt off and just wait. She'll show up. She'll show up, man. It's coming. She sings too. It's awesome. It's a full.
I was waiting for. He was sitting on the dock of the bay watching the tide roll away, but that would be way before Elijah's time. And this is a great way to avoid talking about what transpired over the last 12 to 24 hours. So let's just keep it going.
Yeah, let's get it out of the way real quick. Last night, Nebraska did not close. Panicked or not so much? You think things can be okay? Are you encouraged or are you discouraged 24 hours later?
Always be closing, right? You know, there are things to be pretty discouraged about, especially when you've seen that movie over and over and again, and the ending never changes. But I thought there were some things that were positive. I don't think they lost by quitting. Whereas I think if you look back at some of the games over the past, few years, and even last year, leading at halftime against Illinois and Minnesota, and then just coming into the second half, and you really didn't have any confidence when they took to the field in the second half that they were going to win those games. I don't think I got the sense last night that there was give up. Minnesota made plays when it needed to make plays. That sounds very cliche, and it is. But I think if you look back at some of those close losses a year ago when Nebraska had a chance to win, there was just a mentality of give up, of the inevitable, and you hate to say quitting, but I don't think Nebraska ever gave themselves a chance sometimes in those close games because they just assumed the worst. I think that team played well enough certainly to win. I don't know how good Minnesota is, to be honest with you, but Nebraska certainly played well enough to win, and I don't think there was a quit. I think they did fight to the very, very end of the game, and so I think that that's promising. But, I was listening to your show last week at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and your guest was brilliant in his analysis because you asked him what Nebraska needed to do to avoid some of the pitfalls, and then the guy said that avoid 1st and 15 and avoid penalties when you have the ball near the goal line, and those things resurfaced again. So whoever that was, you ought to have him back.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Is Sims going to be...
That was my least favorite segment.
Yeah, no, is Sims going to be fixable?
Did you say Jamal Lord? What?
No.
Oh, see, we had that earlier too.
I'm serious.
Well, I didn't get a play earlier, but anybody who played the game back, 25 years ago was watching that, and I think as you watch that first half develop, those flashbacks to one of the best safeties to ever play quarterback at Nebraska, other than Tony Veland, that you probably thought, you know what, this guy is being overused in the running game, and he's going to get hurt. And if he's their best guy, they cannot continue to allow him to carry the ball 19 times, in situations like that. I think Nebraska exposed their hand by relying on him so much. 19 times is a lot. I don't think he should probably throw the ball more than 19 times a game, but they've got to get some of those backs to where they can rely on them to get 5, 6, 15, 16 yards a carry and not have it be Sims Whereas we knew back in the Jamal Lord era that if it was 3rd and 8, sure enough, they're going to shotgun snap it, and it's a quarterback draw over and over, and that's the hand that got played last night.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things, Bill, we were talking about how much should Nebraska sort of admit who they are and lean into that versus, try to have your quarterbacks be drop back types when they're not. They're just not that. Because look who's even behind Sims, Heinrich Haarberg, and that's kind of the rub on him is he's not a great thrower either, right? Chubba Purdy, maybe he is a great thrower, but in the limited action that we've seen him, I don't know. But he's fast, and guess what? Haarberg's fast and big, and Sims is fast and big. It kind of seems pretty like lean into that. That's what you are. You're not attracting the next Tom Brady to come play at Nebraska. And by the way, you don't have the receivers to do it right now. And then you can't pass protect. Like, all the signs are just telling you, don't worry about drop back game. It's just not who you are.
Maybe they've got to get him out there and be much more mobile and throw, the shorter passes on the run. If he can't sit back in the pocket, which I thought the offensive line played better last night than I expected it to. I mean, he did get hit a little bit in the backfield, but, Nebraska out-yarded Minnesota, and I thought Nebraska's line played better than Minnesota's line. So I think there's some promise there. But, yeah, what will the game plan be next week? Will we see Sims roll out a little bit more, be more mobile, and throwing on the run? Maybe he's more comfortable doing that. I don't know, but he certainly was locked in on the receivers that he was throwing the ball to. Once he had his mindset that he was going that way, that's the way he went. And as a result, you've got 3 interceptions. And Nebraska telegraphed it with, this guy's going to run on 3rd down and 6, and they're just going to rely on the big quarterback to get the first down. Those backs have to be more consistent. I thought we saw some really nice things from Anthony Grandin till the last carry of the game. I mean, he made some nice plays. I thought Ramir Johnson was the player that Matt Rule has fallen in love with, right? And clearly he was underutilized the last couple of seasons. And Gabe Ervin, I think, can be the kind of back that will give you, the 4 to 8 yard, power play. So they've got a nice complement of backs, but they can't rely on Sims to be the main ball carrier, nor can they allow him to be a drop back passer.
Okay, so real quick on that. I agree with you, but just to talk about it, since this is a talk show, why would you say they can't rely on him to do that? Why not? Why not let him
run the ball all the time?
Yeah,
why run the ball all the time?
Because you're talking to Nebraska fans that they've saw. Eric Crouch did it, Frost to a degree did it, Lord did it. Why not? Why can't they?
They don't have
because Adrian Martinez did it too, and ends up with shoulder surgery, a broken jaw, bumps and bruises throughout the course of the season, and you didn't have development with your backups. And maybe Purdy's a better thrower, maybe Haarberg's a better hybrid between all 3 of them. He can throw adequate, he can run adequately, and Sims is just a great runner. I don't know what the answer is, but I think we'll have a pretty good idea of how well this team adjusts from one game to the next. If your most improvement is from your first game to your second game, that's going to be a glaring example as to what Nebraska does with Jeff Sims next Saturday when they take on Colorado. I would imagine it's going to be different. I would imagine that they're going to do the job that Matt Rule said last night. They're going to coach him up. They're going to make adjustments, show him what he did wrong, and give him another chance to be better. But to let him run the ball as much as he did and to telegraph it, that's just going to get him hurt.
It's Bill Doleman with us here.
Some of those runs over to the running backs to decrease how many times he ran. Sorry, Elijah.
It's Bill Doleman with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Bill, the 2 takeaways I think that are just I'm going to paint with a broad brush here from last night are people are encouraged by the defensive performance. They're discouraged by the offensive performance. And I want to get your thoughts. Are you more encouraged by what the defense showed you, or are you more discouraged by what the offense showed you? I guess the question being, do you think there's more hope in the fact that the defense can keep you in a lot of games this year, or is there more discouragement in the fact that the offense has potential to blow a lot of games this year? Where are you at on that sliding scale?
I did like the aggressiveness of the defense, and I think that's kind of what we were expecting and hoping to see from Tony White's 3-3-5. People hear that and they hear the criticisms. Nobody really knows. They go down to Buffalo Wild Wings and think that they're all defensive coordinators. In the 3-3-5, it's angles, it's athleticism, it is a certain coached violence to see the ball and go hit the ball. And I thought we saw that. I thought the secondary was as good as advertised. Other than that last catch on 4th down and 10, Hartzog got beat on a great route. Tipped the cap, and he made a great catch before his heel came down. But I thought the defense played pretty well. And the other thing significantly about the defense that was different than a year ago in the opener, remember in the second half against Northwestern, Nebraska's defensive line, those guys played 50, 60 more snaps. And by the time the end of the third quarter rolled around, they were completely gassed and there was no depth. And we saw last night that Nebraska played a lot of guys as advertised defensively. And I didn't see the participation chart, but I would bet that you had at least 20 to 25 guys that played, and a significant number of snaps were divided up amongst the guys along that defensive line. So they were fresher in the fourth quarter of this year's season opener than what we saw in last year's season opener. And I think maybe Corey Campbell did his job in getting that group prepared to play physical football on the defensive side of the field for 4 quarters. That was not the case the last 4 years at all.
So, Bill, you're walking up to the whiteboard. You have space underneath my name, which has an F next to it because that's inevitable. What grade are you giving Nebraska from last night? Solely on last night. Nothing before, nothing upcoming. Just those 60 minutes. What's the grade?
Well, first of all, they're not from Iowa, so that's not an F. Secondly, they're not Cubs fans, so they don't get an F there. And they're not from Creighton. So, okay, so those are the positives. For Nebraska overall, well, you don't win the game, so I'm not exactly sure that you get a high grade. But this is the time of the semester when people are considering pass no pass. So if you want to squeak by and get out of my class, you might want to. I would give them a passing grade. I'm not going to say fail just yet, but if there's no improvement next week, and if they drop one of the games at home in Lincoln, that's not going to be good. Then we're going to have the Connor Clark Insurance Workshop.
Well, let's define the terms. What is a pass and what is a no pass? Is you're passing just 6 and 6?
To me,
that's a solid
if you get a passing grade, you win, right?
C's get degrees, right? I still think this is a team that can win 7 games. I'm encouraged by the way the defense played. I think that defense. People give Illinois and Purdue and some of these other teams in the Big Ten way too much credit, right? So I'm not going to say this team is going to not go to a bowl game, but I think it can be good enough because I thought the defense played well, and I don't think they lost the game by quitting. And I think we saw that the last couple of years, that when they went on the field in the second half, even with the lead, there was just an air of inevitability that they were going to lose. And I don't think that team felt that it was going to lose. Maybe when the fumble hit the floor, maybe when Sims threw the interception, that here we go again. But for 59 minutes, I felt like that team believed that it could still win the game. And I think that's a positive step.
That's fair.
Unofficially, 24 players played defense last night, unofficially. I think that was your prediction. I think you said, I don't know. It has to be about, I think you hit it right on, 24. So a lot of guys did play defensively last night, and that number could increase at home when you're actually traveling with more dudes too. Who knows?
And they played early, and they were fresher later, like Bill touched on. Yep. Billy D, what's on the docket this weekend? You got about a minute. Are you going to catch some walleye?
No, just a bunch of dudes sitting around drinking some beverages, listening to Rick Springfield on a lake in Minnesota.
Yeah,
that sounds fun.
waiting for
guys being dudes.
Look at that. Love it.
Killer Bees hanging out in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Well, darn tootin'. I like it. I know it's Fargo, but just roll with me there. Bill Doleman, Pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports, the professor at Bill Doleman on Twitter. Billy D, we'll see you next week. Thanks for a few minutes today.
All right, boys. Go Big Red. See ya.
There he is.
See you later, Bill.
All right. Brady Oltmans is on deck. We'll get his take on what to expect from Satterfield moving forward. Hail Varsity continues.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out, and big thanks to Lions Pub, Kraynak.
Oh, man. Lions
This is
Pub.
right next to the hotel you're at. This was Husker Nebraska Central before kickoff yesterday.
Yeah.
We had a great time at the Graduate. We love those folks. But, I mean, you had a whole room, and these guys here in downtown Minneapolis have adopted Nebraska for years since they moved to the Big Ten.
Exactly. Lions Pub.
Ray's fun, man. I love talking to Ray.
He's a good guy. Lions, Lyons, and it's right in downtown Minneapolis, and it's the official watch site for the Minnesotans for Nebraskans. And so, yeah, this place was absolutely packed yesterday. And it's connected. It's pretty much connected to the Embassy Suites. Minnesota, by the way, Minneapolis in general, can we just get this out of the way? All it would take is like, I don't know, some sort of big money or maybe 2 or 3 guys that were big money. Like, it's a sleeping giant. I'm telling you, it's the best city in the Big Ten. Go ahead, think through mentally right now. What is a better city?
Aside from
Chicago.
Okay. Aside from Lincoln,
I'm biased.
Connor says Chicago.
but
Yeah.
But you're in Evanston. It's different. It's not. And it's Northwestern. They do car washes and it's all weird.
No,
You can't.
There's all sorts of
That doesn't work.
naked men.
I should have known it was going there.
But it's basically the best city in the Big Ten. The facility, the football stadium. I mean, it's a substantial structure, right? Like, it's not. You didn't feel like you were going into some kind of rinky-dink thing. It's
Madison.
their facilities
Madison
are
is
good.
nice, though.
Oh, Madison's
Yeah, I
a
haven't
really
been to
nice
Madison.
town. Madison's
Brady
great.
Oltmans is
That
with
one's
us
good.
at Brady
I'm talking
Oltmans on
city,
Twitter.
though.
Oh no, the
Brady,
city of
jump in here.
the
Dive
city
into
of
this
Madison is fantastic.
Warm nightmare of a Friday after a blown lead.
I'm talking city,
Hey.
like big city,
Hey,
like something that would show up on an MSA or list. You know,
Madison's a pretty good city too. I will say Ann Arbor is nice. Ann Arbor's a cozy college town.
Too close to Detroit for my liking, personally.
They have Michigan, so
Hey,
but here's my point.
the real estate's real cheap. Elijah.
I'm just saying, Minnesota, I think could be a lot better in all sports than they are, based on just what they have here. It's
I think that's fair.
What are the industries in Minneapolis and St. Paul? I mean, the Duluth
Target.
plumbing folks,
Prince,
Target.
Target,
Yeah.
Prince and Kirby Puckett, basically.
Miller Brewing
thank you.
Company.
Thank you,
But
Dave
they're
Chappelle.
not industries necessarily. But
I thought that's more so Milwaukee. The Miller Brewing Company.
Oh, you're right. I just picked a northern city. I
Come
can't
on.
lie.
Yeah, you did.
No, Target's a big one.
No, I know it's huge, but they don't even sell tobacco there.
Oh,
Well, not since the incident.
Wow. Brady, I gotta ask you before we get to your just incredible story with the Guardian on Nebraska Volleyball Day.
Brady going international, baby.
He is, man. It's Brady's world.
The Guardian out of the UK,
out of the United Kingdom, mate.
And we're at a British pub right now. There's some weird stuff happening here. Okay,
we are locked in. Okay, let's talk Marcus Satterfield. Can he and Sims and this offense get on the same page? Is this just a foregone conclusion that you're just going to have to live with some questionable decision making after one game, that it's going to be like this the rest of the season? Or do you think Nebraska, Sims, and Satterfield can, find a happy medium, tailor an offense and a game plan to use their strengths and be way better than they were, at least last night? And I know it was game one. I know it was within grasp for Nebraska.
Well, because I thought about this, what exactly were people expecting out of the offense? To borrow a cue from the skipper,
21.
Yeah, real true. But to borrow a cue from the skipper in the last segment, a wise man last week said that Nebraska is going to have to rely on its defense to make plays, make stops, and then the offense to get a lead and just bleed games out. They're not going to be an exciting, full-paneled offense, especially considering look at what they started. I mean, you've got a former walk-on starting at receiver, which is a completely different lineup than what we all anticipated it being going into fall camp and even coming out of spring. Plus, you got Garcia Castaneda, who may be out long-term now. They lose him halfway through. So then you got Billy Kemp, who Heinrich Harburg had more catches than Billy Kemp last night. Okay. Yeah. So it was just a completely different look. Now, having said that, I do think there's a certain bit that you look at Jeff Sims, and he made plays, and clearly that offense was geared directly towards Jeff Sims. I mean, his directed runs, his passes, all of it was geared towards him. But you look at Marcus Satterfield, and that was some of the worries, was how the offense ran through Spencer Rattler and how Rattler handled it at South Carolina. And you kind of see those same alarms, or at least those same red flags pop up last night. And clearly, when you got a quarterback throwing 3 picks, some of them are just completely telegraphed. Scotland Yard could have read all of those over the blips. So but I think at a certain point, they still had the lead. And we knew a couple weeks ago Anthony Grant had fumble issues in camp, but they stuck with him enough and trusted him enough to make the plays come crunch time. He fumbles again. You have to believe that either those opportunities won't be given to him, or they're going to, again, trust him in crunch moments to correct those mistakes. So either way, it's game one. It takes a while to knock some of that rust off, or to knock a win out of those situations back into Nebraska after they hadn't been there in a couple years. But you're right, there's certainly a lot of red flags there at quarterback right now.
Well, here's my question, and you mentioned, kind of on the passing side with Harburg getting more receptions than Billy Kemp. I was kind of surprised that AG ended up getting more carries than Gabe Ervin, right? I mean, obviously we talked about the fumble issues throughout camp, but I liked what I saw from Gabe, and he ripped off a pretty long run there in the second half. I believe it was a 30-yarder, and not saying that don't give Anthony Grant a chance, but Gabe Ervin was your number one guy, at least on paper, heading into that game. So that was something that kind of surprised me.
No, the allocations of the handoffs, especially in the first half. I mean, when you're talking about workload and how they want to recycle guys and keep them fresh legs for the fourth quarter, I was a little kind of surprised at just the allocation of carries in that first half, because I thought Gabe had made it clear, and the coaches had made it clear, Gabe was kind of their number one guy, at least for the opener. And I think you probably, looking at it now, it's clear Gabe is probably still the number one guy going into Colorado. But Ramir looked great. Emmett, I thought, on special teams did a lot of great things for him. So there's depth at running back that you like, and the offensive line blocked relatively well for them. And on those polls, those tight ends pulled really well. So there's a lot of promise at running back. They're just going to need them to do a little bit more, especially give them some of those carries that they were designing up for Jeff Sims, because you can't have your quarterback taking those kinds of hits. Maybe in week 1, but 4 weeks from now, he's going to be feeling those.
Well, if you look at it, guys, 5 total carries between Gabe Ervin and Anthony Grant in the first half yesterday. 5 total carries. To your point about the allocation, and when we break this down, and look, by the way, there's folks in the stream and elsewhere talking about like, is this overreaction? It's one game. It's not like you expected Nebraska to be 22 Georgia. 100%. Where we're coming from is like, what does Nebraska need to do now in order not to repeat this again next weekend, right, against Colorado? Is it as simple as change up that allocation a little bit? Quarterback ran too much. Running backs didn't get it enough. Switch that up a little bit by a good 25, 30%. And you're probably in a better situation than we are today.
Yeah, and you're talking, granted, Marcus Satterfield comes from South Carolina, so he was still in the college game. But this, Matt Rule, a lot of the coaching staff, they're coming from the NFL again. And it takes the coaches game reps as well to get back into the flow of it together.
That's fair.
You've got an offensive line that still needs those game reps together. Receivers, clearly, with what they have, need game reps together. And as much of 7-on-7 in reps as Jeff Sims had with his receivers, it didn't seem like he was comfortable enough scanning the field and going through his reads and checkdowns. He was keying an eyeball on his first guy and knew where to go with it. So I think, again, those are hiccups, and those are game one things. The other alarm, I think, is they didn't have those many opportunities, and they needed to capitalize on them, especially those red zone picks. You know what I mean? Like, again, Nebraska had 3 offensive drives in the first half, kind of like North Dakota last year. if they're having as many offensive drives against Minnesota week 1 as they did against North Dakota last year, I think that's a mark of understanding improvement from this team, just based upon what it was. Granted, it wasn't great during those first months of the season last year, but I think that's another point that you can look at and say, okay, there's positive step forwards, but it's also a point of this is how far the program has to go still.
So Brady Oltmans with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brady, obviously on a day like today, we're going to focus on the things that need to get better, but I want to get your thoughts on the game as a whole. Did that Nebraska team exceed your expectations with what game 1 was for Rule? Did they fall short of your expectations? Was that about what you expected? Put it in perspective for me whenever we look back at where we were a week ago looking ahead to this game. What was Nebraska's performance to you?
It was interesting. It was one of those where I say it's interesting because, I mean, the offense, the back or skill position play on the offense, I think left a lot to be desired. But on the line, I thought that offensive line performed better than I anticipated it performing. I thought as a whole, the defense performed better. They left some gaps, but keep in mind, they throw a lot of that defense, and it's different from a lot of those guys went into. Plus, you got Ty Robinson that's gone for the vast majority of that second half on, whatever you call it, by the letter of the law, that's targeting. When I played, that's called giving a guy a kiss through the face mask. Not to be one of those guys. But Omar Brown, I mean, he showed up and showed out. And he's a guy that you talked to all last year, and you think, why is this guy not on the field? You had similar instances. Tommy Hill kind of had a weird game. Can't seem to get in the right spots. There were just guys on that defense now. And obviously with Bullock, guys who have clearly shown and improved in these last couple of months that have found a way to get on the field. And you're thinking, how did they not get on the field? Or how did they not regularly contribute last year? And really, if you put that all together, maybe you want some more pressure. Maybe you want some more impact on the front, from the front seven. And overall, I think you're saying you're going to allow only 13 points in the opener. You feel pretty good about your chances getting a W out of that one. So I think you can feel pretty good about that defensive performance.
Brady, real quick, tell folks about your coverage of the Nebraska Volleyball Day. Just an awesome event, and you're international, baby.
About 10 seconds here.
Yeah, just out there, world history, man. Covering it for the Guardian, world record. Why not spread Nebraska and women's athletics love across the pond and to the world over? Number 2 sports story on the Guardian today, for the record.
Bang.
I love it. Well, follow him at Brady Oltmans internationally and locally. Brady, take care, buddy. Thanks so much.
We'll see you guys. Appreciate it.
Brady.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Yeah, Roadshow Friday continues. Here we're at Lions Pub, downtown Minneapolis. So we'll have the weekend edition tomorrow, 7:45 to 9. And your first full day of college football tomorrow. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, Mark Kraynak is on assignment in the can. He is back now. And
untrue.
Untrue?
Okay, it was true. Whatever.
It was true.
I'm drinking a lot of water. Rehydrating.
Nebraska starts another season off 0-1. But we've got into this whole arm wrestling match of encouraged or discouraged. And I think 2/3 of the ball game, you could be encouraged. I think you're discouraged about the offense, and that is the question mark. That is the unknown. Is what is Nebraska going to get from Satterfield? And knee-jerk is, oh, no, everyone at South Carolina was right about him, but everyone started loving him about the last 4 games of the season. Sims is enough to be an Elite 11 guy, a high 4-star pick, one of the top recruited quarterbacks out of Jacksonville. There is talent.
Oh, yeah.
There's a special skill set. You've got time to get that harnessed, fellas, before Boulder. You have to. We'll spend more time tomorrow about the impact of Colorado and what has to happen if you're Nebraska next Saturday.
Kind of feel like, Chris, one of the things that Satterfield in particular, and maybe to a degree Rule, needs to figure out is restraint. I mean, really, like restraint. Just because the down and distance might call for, or the situation of the game might call for,
Here's what my play sheet says.
Let's throw it into coverage.
Yeah.
Right? Let's throw it into coverage.
On 1st and 10.
I know it might say that, but I think you need to exercise a little restraint.
Here's what my guy can do. Here's what my chart says to do.
And think about last night, what that was, right? Like, you had a chance. But was there a reason for Nebraska to throw the ball at all? I mean, really, can you make that case?
People,
no, I'm
people
serious. You're up a
no,
touchdown
people
with 4 minutes left.
People have gone nuts
I'm just saying.
on the start of the fourth quarter. Why the hell are they throwing the ball, burn the clock? Satterfield by nature is conservative. For him to take a shot to Hill, loved it. To go RPO, right? The RPO game is a staple of rule.
I know.
And it got deflected.
This is all hindsight.
Both of those plays hit. We're not whining it at all if you're a Nebraska fan because you win. Listen.
But you didn't.
You didn't. And
you're probably not gonna.
But your quarterback has got to be better or he's got to start watching. You've got to find an alternative.
But that's assuming that there's a better option somewhere.
No,
that's my point. Like
you've got to know that quarterback room. You're the quarterback's coach as well as the OC. And what can they do? Now, he may have shown in practice, guys, that he can RPO it. He can run a slant. He can throw a deep ball. But when it comes to game time, those guys are coach killers. You show somebody something in practice, and it's got to translate to the game, and it doesn't always do it.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm just saying, if you're Satterfield, it really is it's an exercise in restraint. It is watching the clock. It is milking that thing down to 1
Kraynak,
second
you're
left.
in a dark place. You go from feet one weekend now to restraints the next.
Oh my goodness! You're no
foul.
Who is the dark mind that just connected those dots? Those were completely unrelated. But Chris is big into foot restraints, apparently. But truly, there is an art to it. It's different, and you can
really
not to foot restraints. My goodness, what is happening here? I am trying to talk football, and Schmidt is out of
the
control.
last 2 times I've been on this show, we've gotten into topics that are just so far off the beaten path. I mean,
Kraynak turns to me. There's an art to it.
Chris is. I'm trying to talk about football, but truly,
I'm sure you are.
It is an exercise in. I don't have another word besides restraint, but now I'm worried about saying it because
caution.
It turns you into a 12-year-old. So
caution.
Caution. Use caution. Really, milk the clock. Be who you are, not who you want to be.
Sure.
You want to open it up. You want to attract the next. Hey, this is how you get to the NFL. You don't get to the NFL as a quarterback and receiver by going to Nebraska. You just don't. You just don't. That'd be cool if they did. That'd be really cool if they did. It doesn't happen, though. That doesn't happen. So let's not optimize for those 2 positions, thinking that all of a sudden you're going to become some quarterback factory to the NFL, receiver factory to the NFL. Doesn't happen. Like, combine those 2 positions, you have Quincy Enunwa and Niles Paul that have done anything in the NFL in the last 20 years at those 2 positions. Come at me, bro. For real.
Use
Who
what
else?
you got.
Those 2. That's it. 20
use
years.
What you got.
So you get 1 NFL caliber receiver or quarterback per decade. That's our average right here. That's what we're talking about. 1 per decade. You're going to optimize your offense around that? No.
Run game, physical play, smart decision making. Elijah, how did your friend Will Compton take last night?
I think Connor's got that audio pulled up. Honestly, I think his analysis of the game really falls in line with a lot of things we've said today. It fits well.
4 turnovers. You can't do it. Can't do that. Got to play better in the low red. Can't be shooting ourselves in the foot with false start penalties. We got to get points before half. Dean Blandino says we scored a touchdown, but I guess we didn't score the touchdown. We're not going to blame the refs. But there's some shit. And by the way, there's good shit out there on tape. Nobody believes in the boys. There's good shit. Show the tape where they're moving the ball down the field. Show the tape of them running the football. Show the tape of the defense stomping out there. Show the tape of the big plays being made. Brown with that pick, undercutting that pick in man coverage to the outside. That was a hell, there's a lot of good to pull from that tape. The result sucks. And I want to go stand in oncoming traffic. But there's some good to build on. This wasn't going to happen overnight. We should be walking out of Minnesota with a W because they suck. That's a dog team. And we beat ourselves. But we got to take care of the ball. You got to build on the good, fix the bad, and eliminate the to get you beat. We should be 1-0 on the Colorado. Oh, look, in the fan base, there ain't no head hanging here. We're bummed because we lost, because it hurts, because we care. But we ain't hanging our head. We got a big one next week. We got a big one next week. We got a stack of W at Colorado, backs against the wall.
Will Compton, busting with the boys.
Said it well.
He was exhausted. He sounded, his voice sounded exhausted.
I mean, did you go back and listen to our reaction show last night? I think you could say the same about us. That was most of Husker Nation last night.
Oh, completely. And listen, we're pretty fair about assessment and blame and optimism. I think we try and get all sides covered objectively. And he's not wrong. There's some good, there's some bad, there's a lot of ugly, but ugly can win in the Big Ten. Nebraska's just got to find out how ugly they are.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time of Friday, Hail Varsity Radio on the road. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Mark Kraynak, Connor Clark. Big thanks to Bill Doleman, Brady Oltmans. Reminder to get buckled up. One of every 3 fatal crashes in Nebraska involves an alcohol-impaired driver. Why take chances? If you drink, don't drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Fellas, it's been an adventure in Minnesota. Tough one last night for Nebraska fans.
Yep.
You woke up and reassessed or stayed pissed. I get it. Weekend edition tomorrow, 7:45 to 9. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock is Pearl Jam for me and Kraynak. And I can't thank the Husker fans that came to Minnesota enough for coming by and saying hi and hanging out with us the last 2 shows. You're awesome. You're incredible. And we'll be back at it tomorrow morning. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Hail Varsity Radio podcast. That's where we post. Can watch the show, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, and the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Give that a follow. So, Elijah, it's been a lot of duty with 3 shows a day, but we wouldn't have it any other way, and we'll see if Nebraska can get fixed. Kraynak, I know you're geared up for a little black in honor of the Black Shirts performance.
That's right. Tomorrow. That'll be good. I'm interested in watching Colorado tomorrow. So they kick off at 11 against TCU. TCU is 17th in the country right now. Everybody knows they were in the playoffs last year. 20.5-point favorites right now against Colorado. I think in particular, it's been tough to kind of keep up with exactly what Colorado is going to be good at or not. Like they have some skill position talent, but from what I understand, their defensive line is woefully undersized outside of like 2 dudes.
Yep, their depth is
they have like 2 dudes that are above 300 pounds, and that's like it.
And their offensive line,
like that.
Their offensive line is 6 deep.
Yeah. So we'll see how that shakes out over the course of
Elijah's wheels are turning to go make some money on TCU.
No. Here's the thing with Colorado when I think about that. Where they have talent is they have elite talent in the back end of their secondary, and they have great skill position players on offense, specifically their wide receiver room. We'll see how Shedeur Sanders is. But from watching Nebraska's game last night, committing to the rushing attack and getting 200-plus yards rushing next week is going to be absolute key. You want to shorten that game, keep Colorado's offense off the field. I said it a couple weeks ago. I'll say it again. You need to get pass rush with 4. If you can get pass rush with 4, you can drop 7, and then you can realistically have a good shot of stopping that Colorado offense. Offensively, you got to get after the ball running it, because what we saw from Jeff Sims yesterday does not make me feel confident about him airing it out against Colorado in any way, shape, or form.
option
that's
football.
Connor, it's go beat them playing Big Ten football. You beat their offensive line with your defensive line with 4, no blitzing, and then offensively you just beat the hell out of them. That's going to be the game plan to beat Colorado.
Connor, are you going to get a free Ty Robinson?
I would like to, yeah. I mean, that was rough. I will say on Colorado, and I will quote my dad here who is in town for the week, and he said TCU 20.5 is the lock of the week, so take that as you will.
We shall see if it is. Back tomorrow morning, 7:45. Weekend edition gets kicked off, and join us that way. Big thanks to Bill Doleman. Big thanks to Brady Oltmans. Big thanks to Connor Clark. Big thanks to Elijah Herbel and Mark Kraynak. Kraynak and I are going to go have a 4-pound steak. We're not sharing. It's going to be good. And you fellas, love you both. Thanks for jumping in. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Weekend edition, 7:45 with Hail Varsity. Have a good one.